Seb, thanks for joining me. Let's get into these topics and see if they're underrated or overrated. First topic on the list is server cases. What do you think?
Yeah. So specifically, I'm assuming we mean server cases for GPUs. Also,
Yeah.
Jack, thanks for having me on the channel. Yeah. Also, I want to point out here that these are just our opinions, kind of for fun, and we specifically picked these topics because there is no right or wrong answer really for most of these. So it's just in all good fun, and we might disagree, and that's also okay because we can have a different opinion.
Yep.
Anyway, server cases for GPUs, I'm going to say it's actually underrated because in my mind, the only real downside to server cases might be that possibly if you tinker to the level that Jack here does, you might get away cheaper with open air rigs. But there are also some pretty cheap options for server cases too that you could go down with. And for me, the main the big advantage of server cases, actually a quick one is just setting it up takes 2 minutes and you're done. It's all just slot in the GPUs and put the lid on.
Yep.
But the other really big one, especially when you start growing your farm, not that my farm is particularly big, but it's being able to manage the airflow and the heat. Because since it's a contained little box, it pulls cold air in on one side and just shoots it out the other side. It's so easy to just slot that into some sort of little ducting or something and just push the hot air straight out without having to warm up a room or anything like that. And that is the main reason. And I also think that is something people who are kind of all into open air rigs for GPU mining might not realize what a difference that makes until you're at that 3 or 4 rig scale.
Yeah.
And it's July and all of a sudden you're like, I gotta turn my rigs off, not because it's not profitable, but because I'm cooking alive in here. So that is why I say server cases for GPU mining, actually underrated.
Okay.
They're fantastic.
I'm going to go with overrated, but I'm talking about my setup because I do see the benefits of if you've got 10, 15 rigs in a small area that server cases are probably just about the only way to do it. But I think for small to mid-size home miners, just the biggest downside being the large cost. And with GPU mining being such a small profit endeavor that when you're basically paying for an additional graphics card, which is a server case price-wise, but it's not offering any extra hash rate, that is going to take your ROI kind of farther than I would like. So I see it both ways, but for medium to small home miners, I'm going to go with overrated.
Yeah, fair point.
All right. Up next, we have mining for profit, or otherwise mining the most profitable coin instead of yield mining. And I'm going to go first on this one. I've done a few videos on this, but I'm going to go with underrated on that one. There's tons of videos on yield mining and the benefits of yield mining. But the way that I kind of look at it is if you're yield mining, you could always be getting more yield if you were mining the most profitable coin and doing manual swaps or even using something like UNMINEABLE. And that way you're getting essentially every day the most dollar amount that you can get from your hardware, and then you're free to do with whatever you want with that dollar amount. If you want to put it into a different coin where you can get a lot of yield at the time, then you're free to do it. But that's kind of my take on it. And I do see that it's a lot of extra work doing that. If you just want to throw a rig to yield mine something for a year, that's going to be way more hands off than switching over the course of a whole year. But with me, with such a small farm, that's something I'm capable of doing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. From that perspective, definitely underrated. I think I misinterpreted this topic because the way I've been thinking about it is mining for profit, as in how important is it that you're actually profitable every day.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just go off script here and answer the question from that perspective instead, as in like making sure your farm. Excuse me, I'm still kind of getting over COVID. Anyway, I'm like how important is it to make sure your farm is profitable, as in like you're paying less for power than the coins you're mining are worth? Is that over or underrated? I'm gonna say that is overrated, and I think it is okay to be a little bit unprofitable. I agree with you that it's probably a good idea to kind of swap to the most profitable coins if you want to get the most out of it. However, if even the most profitable coins are barely breaking even or even a little bit below, that should be fine because of many reasons. One being, if you got your mining set up as a business, which you should, then comparing sort of like you can expense the gear, you can expense the power, as opposed to taking money out of whatever company, like paying yourself a salary from that, then you gotta pay tax, and then buying crypto with that, which is what we're kind of comparing to when we're looking at profitability.
Yep.
Then it's like it's not apples to apples anymore. Then it's already like, well, as long as it's whatever your tax percentage is, as long as you're above that in terms of profitability, you are actually profitable. So even if it says you're losing $1 a day, you might not be, compared to kind of like taking that money out of your company and buying crypto. And also, I just think that's not where it ends either, because with buying crypto, you also have all these bank transfer fees.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Swap fees. Yeah, there's like a whole extra layer there, especially if you're comparing to like buying a tiny bit every day, which is kind of what mining is. You're gonna lose it all to like exchange fees anyway. So from that perspective, mining for profit, I think, is completely overrated.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree in that if you're maybe going up to like $5 to $10 negative a day, it may be worth it. But I think that's the threshold where you may want to consider if it's better just turning off if you're going very negative every day,
Yeah, I mean, depending on the scale of your farm, if you got
true.
like,
that's true.
If you're in the megawatts of hash power and you're losing $5 a day, that's probably
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess moving on to the next topic, yeah. So that topic is taking loans to buy, I'm assuming, mining hardware specifically.
Yes.
And I'm going to say completely overrated. I think that is one of the worst ideas, just from the big, like, mining, like, crypto is extremely volatile, and it's also a still new sort of asset class in general, and it's so risky. And with any sort of investing, which buying mining hardware is a form of investment, you never want to invest money that you cannot afford to lose.
Yep.
And taking out a loan is like a step even further than that, because not only might it's money you don't even have yet, so you can't even say it's okay that I lose it because you don't even have it.
Yeah.
But it's also gonna be a debt which is gonna accumulate interest. So it's extremely risky, and I would absolutely not recommend doing it. Taking out a loan to buy mining hardware, it's just not worth it. Yeah,
totally agree.
It's like, don't get that desperate for money, that you're taking risks like that, because then you might as well just go to casino or something.
Yeah, totally agree. Very overrated. The thing that sparked this question is I saw a Reddit post of a guy asking if he should buy a KS5 on a credit card, and everyone was roasting him in the comments. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, it's such a volatile asset, and crypto mining may be a safer option to acquire that volatile asset, but it still is at the whims of the crypto market. So overall, not a good idea. Really, I wouldn't advise anybody getting into crypto mining unless they have the money on hand to buy the hardware themselves, and also already have a good bucket of just normal stocks and have an emergency fund set up. I think you need to have all your finances set before you even consider getting into crypto mining.
Yeah, 100% agree. Just to play devil's advocate here, if you're gonna do something like purchase mining gear on a credit card, that could be okay if you have a plan in action where you will be able to pay that back even if you make absolutely zero money mining on that equipment, and only if you're doing that maybe as a play to like improve your credit score or something like that.
Yeah.
So
are you saying pay off within the first month so there's no interest?
Yeah. So either that or some credit cards. I don't know if that's still the case and if that's the case in the rest of the world, but they will offer you like 0% interest for like for like the first 6 months or 12 months or something like that. Like it could be a sort of planned out play like that, but that would be the only way, and only if you can pay the full debt back within that period, like even if it makes no money. If like imagine you mine and you lose all the coins and the miner breaks, you know, that you would still be able to pay it back.
Yeah.
In that case, okay.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Anytime you can take advantage of the credit card companies instead of them taking advantage of you, that's a win. But you just need to be smart enough to do it. All right, moving into number 4, spec mining new coins. So for me, I don't do this a lot, but I think it probably is underrated. I think if you're looking for big money from crypto mining, not the kind of get rich slow that I normally go for, that spec mining for new coins is basically the one of the only ways to make a big chunk of change quickly. What comes to mind when I think of this is like Red Panda Mining selling $3,000 of Carlson for a couple weeks of mining because he was ahead of the game on that. I think it takes a lot of research to always be checking these new coins because there's so many of them that are just junk. And that's also part of it, is that you may mine 10 coins before you actually get one that ends up appreciating and making good money on. So it's definitely very hit or miss. But I can see the benefits of it. It's just not something I really mess around with.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I also think it is underrated, but it only during certain circumstances. Like, don't do it if you... It's kind of like if you can afford to kind of pay that electricity out of pocket and it doesn't affect your personal finances, then sure, like it's a gamble kind of, right? But it's fun. And as you say, that is the probably like easiest, while not being guaranteed, way of making kind of a significant amount of money with like not that much effort put into it.
Yep.
If you do happen to be lucky, like those people who kind of like GPU mined Caspa very early on and just sat on it, you know, you'd be laughing right now. It's like one rig of 3070s for a couple of weeks and you'd be a millionaire. I don't know if those numbers are actually true, but it really is within that range, you know. But you gotta be, first of all, you gotta have the diamond hands. You know, like you can't sell on that first pump where it's like, ooh, I made a few $100s with this, you know. Oh, you can, but then it's never gonna go, you know. Then you gotta watch that continue on and see, oh, could have been 1,000, could have been 10,000, could have been 100,000, but I sold when it was worth $125. Oh well. So I think that is my answer. It's underrated. If you want to have fun and if you want to be active and looking at projects and doing all of that stuff, but it is of course also kind of the highest risk, because maybe none of the projects you pick ever, you know, get that big pump, and then you're SOL. So
all right, you want to take this next one?
Sure. So this is a topic I picked, which is diversifying your mining hardware, which I think is so underrated. I cannot stress this enough. I feel very strongly about this, but that is also because of I lived through, you know, the Ethereum merge, as many of the viewers and you as well did, where it was like I was just all in on GPUs, and because it was so profitable then, and it kind of was a good play, to be honest. Like, all my GPUs paid themselves off, and you know, then some, and then some. But the problem was I didn't sell, and when the merge hit, you know, I wasn't profitable. And GPUs, I mean, has seen, you know, little time slots here and there of being profitable since then. But for most of the time since the Ethereum merge, my GPUs have not been very profitable for me. So if I instead would have, you know, got an L7, you know, ASIC miner, a, you know, let's say 12 CPU mining rigs, and I don't know, just like diversifying into all different genres of mining, I would have been able to keep mining and keep stacking all throughout, especially through that period of like very like early on in the bear market, where coin prices were just so low, but yields for a lot of the coins were like so high. I would have been able to keep mining profitably through that period and just stacking all of these like altcoins. And it would have, like, my channel would have looked completely different, and also my kind of financial situation would have looked quite different now as well.
Yeah, I agree. Underrated. Unfortunately, I'm not practicing what I preach on this, unless you count my one CPU rig for my 30 GPUs. But yeah, that's something I regret about before I purchased all the GPUs I have now, is I wish I would have gotten at least a couple home miners, like a KS0 or some of those gold shell boxes, to kind of diversify. Because right now I am basically all in GPUs. I've got the one 3600 CPU that is on one of my GPU rigs, so I don't even have a standalone CPU rig. But I definitely see what you're talking about, where GPU mining profits haven't been great, so it would have been nice to have some of these other ASIC miners to kind of backfill that profitability, because it kind of does ebb and flow, where it seems like CPU mining is most profitable one month, and then GPU mining takes over, and ASICs have been pretty consistent throughout.
Yeah, and with that, then you probably always have something that's going to be profitable, no matter what the market looks like at any one point in time, you know. So yeah, underrated.
All right, coming up next is using unmineable. I'm going to say overrated on this one, but I know there's been a lot of controversy around this one, and some of it probably started from the video that I made, and I had no idea that video was going to be as popular as it was, and I could have done probably a lot more robust testing method. I kind of just threw something together in a day. But my point still kind of stands, is that if the fee of using unmineable is even over like 5% in my case, that I still think you're probably better off just swapping through TradeOgre. It may be a little bit extra steps, but this again applies to medium to small farms, where that's really not that big of a headache to do. But I can see if you had a huge farm, that's going to be more of a headache. But also, the more coins you're mining, the smaller percentage those little TradeOgre transaction fees are going to be. So in that case, maybe it does even make more sense to do the TradeOgre route. But I see the benefit of ease of use, but I think for small to medium miners, it's somewhat overrated.
Yeah. And I want to say also that I think your video was great, because we need to test these things in different ways.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
there's never going to be a perfect answer of like, this is how much better or worse it is. We got to like approach everything in mining with different testing methodologies, and then just kind of see what we get from all of these different types of tests. But I'm going to say using unmineable, actually underrated. And I'm saying that because there's been so much negativity around it lately, that people are, again, maybe so laser focused on the profitability numbers, where, you know, I don't know. I think my perspective comes maybe more from like, yeah, you can do all these like swap what coin you're mining and set up a new, like, oh, this week I gotta set up a Carlson wallet to mine Carlson to then send to TradeOgre and swap that for whatever coin I want, and then the next week I gotta set up a Celis one, and you know, stay on top of that game. But it's so much simpler to just like, All right, what's the most profitable algo this week? All right, Carlson hash. Point that to unmineable. Keep stacking whatever coin it is I'm wanting to stack.
Yeah.
Baby Doge or whatever, crap coin. And then the next week, all right, which algo is it this week? Pyron hash. Cool. Point that one, unmineable. Get the coin you want. And I say that also because for me and for my personal mining strategy, it isn't about squeezing every penny of profitability out every day, because I don't believe that is what makes the very long-term difference in your success when you see mining as a long-term investing strategy, if you will.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm okay with losing $1 a day in or let's say 20%, because I don't think that's what's gonna be the difference between being a millionaire and being a poor homeless person, from the mining endeavor, right? So that is why I see it like that. I also like it from the taxable event side of things, where and I understand that is very different in different parts of the world, and that is why I bring that up, because it might be the case in many places that like just swapping between different coins, that's cool and you don't owe tax at that point. But in many places that is a taxable event, and that is why there's nothing like unmineable. If whatever crap coin happens to be the most profitable to mine any given week, if that's not the coin you want to be stacking long term, but swapping is a taxable event, unmineable is kind of your only way to go then, really. So that is why I'm going to say unmineable, underrated, but that is mostly because people have kind of been approaching it as if it's the worst thing to ever come out of mining recently, and that's why I'm saying it's underrated.
Yeah,
but my general opinion to it is I'm kind of neutral. Yeah, it is less profitable. I wish it was more profitable. I don't see why there's such a difference there, but there's also some great upsides to it, and I think it's kind of personal preference. So I think it's neutral.
Yeah, that's a good point on the taxable events, because in the US, any swap between a coin is a taxable event. So I use Coinly, so I import all that stuff anyway, so it really doesn't make too big of a difference. Besides, basically at the end of the year, you have different packages. Like if you've got 250 transactions, you only have to pay $20 for Coinly, or if you have over 30,000, then you got to pay the big boy package. I don't know what the cost is, but I'm already gonna be paying that big boy package anyway. But also, I think for like asics, or if you're trying to put your whole farm towards like Neoxa to get a node, then unmineable is nice, because then you're not swapping 5 different coins in a Neoxa. You're just pointing them all towards unmineable. So that's another good point as well.
Moving on, should we talk about big boy asics at home?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, guys, but that's the end of this video. If you want to see the rest of the topics, go over to SEBS channel. I have a link down below, and he's posting part 2 where we discuss 6 more topics. If you like this concept, leave some comments down below of other topics you might want us to discuss in future videos. See you guys next time. Peace.